The Atlanta Braves are headed to Milwaukee for what might be their best October dress rehearsal of the season. But before we get there, Grant Holmes nearly did something Thursday that no Brave has done in more than 30 years. Let's talk about it. Yes, welcome on into Braves Today, a production of the Belief Podcast Network and presented to you by FanDuel. I'm your host, Lindsey Crosby, author of the Braves Today newsletter over at bravestoday.com. Just a few minutes, I want to talk about Braves versus Brewers this weekend. Absolutely fascinating series. It's like the TARDIS picked us up and just dropped us in October because this is going to be a postseason-caliber matchup. But before we do that, Grant Holmes had a no-hit bid through 6 innings against the Chicago White Sox on Thursday. Braves win the game 2-0. And I have seen people online on Al Gore's internet talking about how it's not a big deal and it's not that impressive because it was the Chicago White Sox. The Chicago White Sox, this feels like people who haven't actually watched the rest of the league in a couple years when the White Sox were the worst team in baseball. The Chicago White Sox, after today's games, are 8th in runs scored on the season. When you look at home runs, they are tied with Atlanta for 4th in baseball in home runs. They are the only team in the American League that has 3 25-homer guys on the roster. This is a good offense. And Grant Holmes retired 18 of the first 20 batters he faced through 6 innings. He allows 2 walks in that span. That's the only thing keeping him from a perfect game. It gets broken up in the 7th. The inning opens with a leadoff walk, and then he hangs a slider to Andrew Benintendi. Benintendi rips a single. Walt Weiss comes out to get him. And real quick, there's a lot of people who are mad about Grant Holmes going back out for the 7th inning. He was at 83 pitches after 6. And I think the game score probably matters a little bit here. If it's a 1-0 game, I'm probably on board with, hey, any single hitter here can tie this game up. And it's probably too risky to let Holmes go back out for the 7th. But for a guy that has struggled the way that he has, that has continuously been the one that everybody's trying to put in the bullpen, the one who got blown up last time out, to get through 6 no-hit innings, and then for your manager to tell you, I'm going to let you go back out for the 7th. And it was a quick hook. First time he gave up a hit, the no-hitter's off the board. The lead is the runner at home, like the runner up to bat, the batter. The batter is, like, represents the lead. That is absolutely, like, yes, go and get him. Perfectly fine. Grant Holmes talked after the game, quote, coming back and doing what I did today puts a little bit more of a confidence in my game. I really feel like the people who said Grant Holmes should have been pulled after 6 are basing that decision based off of the results that happened with the first 2 batters. It's really hard to look at a guy who's no-hitting a team through 6. Even though I'm about to tell you how it wasn't very sustainable and he was lucky to be no-hitting them through 6, it's really hard for me to think about, at the very least, you don't let that guy go batter to batter. When you think about the fact the Braves have not had a no-hitter since Kent Mercker in 1994, which blows my mind. Maddox, Smoltz, Glavine, all after that, nothing. No, Kent Mercker in 1994 is the last guy who had an individual no-hitter for the Braves. You're not, the goal is not to get a no-hitter. The goal is to win the game. But knowing where his pitch count was, knowing the fact that there were no hits, and you had a spare run of cushion before the game would be tied, I understand Walt Weiss letting him go back out for the 7th while having the bullpen up and ready. And ultimately, it worked out. Didier Fuentes comes in after the Benintendi single, runners on first and second, and Didier Fuentes punches out all three batters. He gets Braden Montgomery looking. It's like they throw a fastball out of the zone for a ball, and then splitter, called strike three. Colson Montgomery, they set him up, and then slider, swinging strike two, swinging strike three, done. Chase Medroth, he just watched some dudes punch out on sliders. They elevate a four-seamer, he swings through for strike three. Three batters, three punch-outs, and hey, Fuentes threw more sliders and fastballs, which is a thing that we've wanted. So credit to Fuentes for executing the pitch calls. Credit to Sean Murphy for calling those pitches. I feel like Fuentes is the number one example we've seen now that Sean Murphy's back of more diverse pitch mixes. Fuentes has been very fastball heavy this season, and Murphy's the guy that's been getting him to use the slider and the splitter more, and it's been effective like it was today. I just did that whole thing about how it's perfectly fine that you let Grant Holmes go back out for the seventh inning. I do want to clarify something, though, and I understand this is kind of me talking out of both sides of my mouth here. Grant Holmes wasn't necessarily dominant today. He was effective. But again, this is process versus results. The results were fantastic. I don't want to take away from what Grant Holmes actually did. But this is not a process you would be teaching somebody to get those results. Grant Holmes allowed 16 balls into play. One of those was a hit. It was a hanging slider because he just felt like he was running out of gas in that Benintendi at bat. That's why he hung that slider there, right? 9 of the 16 batted balls off of Grant Holmes were hard hit. And the average exit velocity he allowed was 95 miles an hour. That is a hard hit ball. Grant Holmes averaged a hard hit ball on the 16 batted balls he allowed today. And Chicago came away with exactly one hit out of it. Just blows my mind. Chicago had 4 batted balls with expected batting averages over 500, including a 710, a 750, and a 900. So I know I just said a whole thing about being mad that Grant Holmes got to go back out for the 7th. I think that's a player's coach kind of thing. He's got the no-hitter. You have the bullpen ready. He's on a short leash. First, as soon as I imagine if a second guy got on, period, hit, walk, hit by pitch, didn't matter, Holmes was done. I don't think it was he lost the no-hitter, pull him. I think it's 2 runners got on. Now the guy at the plate is the winning run. Granted, it's 7th inning, but still, he represents the lead for Chicago. But just like the sustainability of the outing wasn't really there, but he got it. And Holmes said, quote, "My game plan every game is to go as many outs as quick as possible, go deep in the game, whether that be 5, 6, or 7 innings, get the guys back in the dugout as quick as possible." And he did give credit to the defense. He said how the day was going, I felt like I could throw it anywhere and they were going to hit it at somebody. And they did. Atlanta got the defensive plays. They ran everything down. He came out of this with 1 hit across 6+ innings. We gave him player of the game in the postcast last night. So I wrote all that up in the game story. Today's 3 things. If you're not a Braves Today newsletter reader, you should think about that. BravesToday.com. Today's 3 things. We talked about Grant Holmes being the player of the game and broke down the outing, the Fuentes inning, the offense, and all of that. I don't think this game means that Grant Holmes should start game 2 of a playoff series or anything. I do think he can be useful to an October pitching staff. And I do think when you see how they went Fuentes and then Lee and then Iglesias, and those 3 guys were absolutely dominant. Fuentes, Lee, and Iglesias combined for 3 innings, no hits, no runs, 7 strikeouts. That is exactly how you map out 27 outs. The thing that Alex Anthopoulos has been talking about is what we watched on Thursday afternoon. You got 18 from Grant Holmes. That's more than you're going to ask from him in any October game. The bullpen got the rest. Shutout win. Even though your offense didn't actually do a lot. Austin Riley drove in both runs. Mauricio Dubon had 3 hits. And you didn't actually offensively do that well. They were 1 for 11 with runners in scoring position. The top of the order, Acuna, Baldwin, Olsen, and Albies, combined for 1 hit while striking out 6 times. And of that group of 4 guys, the only 2 hard hit balls were both from Drake Baldwin. He had a line out at 101 and a ground out at 104. I will say, in Reynolds at-bats, 2 of the 3 batted balls were less than 60 miles an hour. I will give him credit. He almost beat out the very first one. He hit 28.2 feet per second getting to first base, which is 1 foot per second off of his career high for average sprint speed. It's abundantly clear. Those people who were telling you that Ronald's just loafing and he's not trying anymore, it's abundantly clear it is still in there. And we have reporting, I believe it was friend of the show, Chad Bishop, talked about Walt Weiss has discussed, they've asked Ronald to pick and choose his moments. That is a moment where he chose to go out and they called him safe, and it was only overturned on replay. End of the day, the 2 runs were enough on Thursday, and the Braves won. 2 runs probably are not going to be enough this weekend. Let's talk about Braves versus Brewers next, right here on Braves Today. Friends, if you are an amateur pitching nerd or just a fan of really good pitching, Friday's game, today's game is for you. Chris Sale versus Jacob Misiorowski. Misiorowski is likely going to be the Cy Young winner unless Atlanta hangs 15 runs on him or something this weekend to just screw up his ERA. And Chris Sale's been really good. 2.16 ERA, 160 strikeouts in 129 innings, and knock on wood, 3 runs or less in 19 consecutive starts. Last time Chris Sale allowed more than 3 runs in a game was April 6th. His ERA is under 2 in that span. It's 191. At the same time, Jacob Misiorowski's been even better. 175 ERA, a 0.75 whip, and 210 strikeouts in 139 innings. Chris Sale has a strikeout rate of 30.9%. It is 94th percentile. Jacob Misiorowski's is percent. It is 100th percentile. I believe he's only behind Mason Miller for best strikeout rate in baseball. And you know the story of who Jacob Misiorowski is. He averages 100.7 on his fastball. He will frequently throw 30 or 40 pitches in an outing that are over 100 miles an hour. He's hit like 103 or 104 this season. The fastball has a whiff rate of 42%. And just when you start sitting fastball, because he throws it like 60% of the time, he whips out a curveball that's got a 43% whiff rate, or a slider that has a 36% whiff rate, or a 92.5 mile an hour changeup that is harder than Bryce Elder's four-seamer. And Friday's matchup is electric. The thing is, though, it's important to point out, the month of June was awful for the Braves. They were terrible in the month of June. They beat Jacob Misiorowski in June. He went 6 innings. They tagged him for 2 runs and a 3-2 Braves win. He took the loss. He only struck out 7. He walked only 1 guy, but he proved that he was human. This is ace versus ace. This is exactly what you were wanting. This is like the epitome of baseball. If you don't like today's game, you're not a fan of baseball. I know if Atlanta loses, it's going to be frustrating. But it's going to be one of those games where you can look back at it and say, yeah, the Braves lost. But the game was good. The pitching was good. And what's really interesting is this Milwaukee team, like, how the heck do they score this many runs? Here's the part about Milwaukee that fascinates me. They are 30th in home runs, and yet they're one of baseball's best offenses. They have scored more runs than the Braves have. 642 versus 608 for Atlanta. Now, there's a whole path here, right? They get on base. They have a .337 on-base percentage, which is the best in baseball. Their slugging's only .397. Their on-base is .337. There are a couple reasons for this. First one, their walk rate, 10.8%, second highest in baseball. They also have the fifth highest batting average as a team at .253. So lots of walks, a lot of contact that turns into hits. They also have the second highest batting average on balls in play at .308. The fun fact here is their strikeout rate is virtually identical to Atlanta's. They don't strike out, they strike out roughly the exact same amount as the Braves do, but they get on base a lot more because of the walk rate, because of the batting average on balls in play, which ties into the batting average. And a lot of that comes back to the team speed. They are the second fastest team in baseball. When you look at average sprint speed for the roster, 28 feet per second. I just gave Ronald credit for breaking 28 feet per second on a run. They average close to what he did on that run. And because of it, they are third in baseball at stolen bases with 129. They are the best team in baseball by run value at +7 for taking extra bases. And they come about that multiple ways. They're fourth best at advancing, meaning actually taking that extra base. They are the best at not being thrown out when attempting the extra base. So not only are they good at taking it, they're good at knowing when not to take it. And so you have an offense that is very fast. You have an offense that is very good at running bases, very good at stealing bases. What you come away with here, a single is not just a single against the Milwaukee Brewers. A walk is not just a single against the Milwaukee Brewers. A walk and a single can be a run by Milwaukee, and very few teams can consistently say that. There are Braves players who can score from first base on a single. It doesn't happen a lot, but there are Braves that can do it. On average, a good part of this Milwaukee Brewers team can do it. So this comes back into the team defense, converting these batted balls. This comes back into the battery. It's probably pretty smart to try to find a way to throw Sean Murphy in 2 of these 3 games. I don't know if you give him Friday off against Misiorowski and then go with Saturday and Sunday. Sunday's a lefty on the mound. We'll get to that in a minute. Sunday's a lefty on the mound, so it makes sense to play him there. But Sean Murphy, historically, has been much better at controlling the running game than Drake Baldwin has. You have Chris Sale, you have Martin Perez in 2 of these games. They don't have a ton of walks. A walk isn't one base runner against Milwaukee. It's a runner on second 2 pitches later. Braves pitchers have allowed 35 steals on the year, but again, 2 of the 3 pitchers are lefties, so they're going to be facing first base, and theoretically, they should help you minimize stolen base opportunities by the Brewers. The Braves would be smart to have Sean Murphy back there as well to try to help with that more. And even if you just use the lefty on the mound to stop it in games 1 and 2, and then you go to Murphy with a righty on the mound and Tyler Mahle in game 3, you can try to find a way to mitigate that advantage somewhat. The other place that having those two lefties is going to help is the Brewers have an OPS 51 points lower versus lefties than righties. So you get two guys, even though Martin Perez is, it's funny, he actually outdueled, if you remember this, he outdueled Jacob Misiorowski in that game. His fastball in that game averaged 13.3 miles an hour less than Jacob Misiorowski's. It was 101.6 versus 88.3. But the Miz allowed 2 earned runs in 6 innings, and Perez allowed 1. And Misiorowski took the loss. So it does work out well for you that you have those guys there. The other part of this is a really weird road trip for the Braves, right? So they played in Chicago on Thursday. After that, they bust to Milwaukee. I personally have never been to Milwaukee. I did not realize Chicago to Milwaukee was like an hour bus ride. I just assumed it was a lot farther. Never really looked at a map to check that out. Makes sense. They'll play in Milwaukee on Friday, in Milwaukee on Saturday. The game times are really weird. And then they are flying on Sunday morning to Williamsport, Pennsylvania for the Little League Classic. Let's talk about the weirdness that's going to be part of that game, and then the questions that I want to see the Braves answer this weekend or get more data on this. We'll do that next, right here on Braves Today. Final segment of Braves Today, Lindsey Crosby. Quick programming note here. This is going to be it for Braves Today until Sunday. I'm leaving town. By the time you watch this, I will be in the middle of travels. Not going to have a scouting report on Friday. Not going to have a scouting report on Saturday. There's not going to be a postcast after Friday's game, and likely there won't be one after Saturday's as well. Back on Sunday night is the Little League Classic in Williamsport, Pennsylvania. I'll have a scouting report during the day. We will do a postcast and a written game recap after. And then back to business as normal on Braves Today on Monday morning. But the Little League World Classic is going to be weird for a couple reasons. One, they're not traveling in on Saturday. Both teams are flying on Sunday morning from Milwaukee to Pennsylvania. Little bit weird. Normally teams don't play or don't travel and play on the same day, but they're choosing to not get hotels in Williamsport overnight. So, really weird there. And it's going to be an interesting ballpark to play baseball in, right? So, American Family Field in Milwaukee, where the first 2 games are being played, is the 12th best ballpark for hitting home runs. The park factor is 103. And it's kind of normal dimensions, right? It's 342 down the left field line. It's 400 to center. It's 337 down the right field line, right? Kind of normal. But by contrast, if you were curious, that's 12th best for home runs on park factor. Truist Park is 17th at an even 100. But when you go to Muncie Bank Ballpark at historic Bowman Field in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, the dimensions are weird. 323 down the left field line, 331 to right. But so it's short, but it's an unusually deep 411 to center field. So it's short on the lines, but it's a deep center field. And this ballpark doesn't actually help Milwaukee that much. They are the worst in baseball at pulling their fly balls. 12.5%. And we all know, I've talked about this a few times now, a pulled fly ball by far has the best statistical and power results of any type of batted ball. If you're going to put a ball in the air, pull it versus going opposite field or straight away. Milwaukee is not good at doing that. They are worst in baseball. The next worst team is at 15.2%, almost 3% better. Milwaukee's not only the worst at it, they're significantly the worst at it. The Braves, by contrast, 18.7%, right there around league average. I think they're 14th out of 30 teams. There's a couple guys on the Braves roster that are really good at it too. Ozzie Albies, 26.2%. He is a pull merchant. That is a compliment when I say that. He is top 30 in baseball at pulling fly balls in the air. Lane Thomas is probably going to be in the lineup on Sunday because you're facing a lefty in Shane Drowan. He's at 26.1%. He is as much of a pulled fly ball merchant as Ozzie Albies is. Matt Olson's over 20%. Mike Yastrzemski's over 20%. Yastrzemski probably won't start on Sunday because of a lefty on the mound and Shane Drowan, but he might come into the game a little bit later. And then several of Atlanta's guys are like 19, 18%, things like that. So they're actually pretty decent at this. It's going to be a weird game on Sunday. I feel like it could be potentially offensively a very big game. So kind of be ready for that. But overall on the weekend, there's 3 questions that I'm trying to answer from this Braves team. Number 1, can they handle elite stuff? Right? We saw them against the Yankees. Cam Schlittler, Max Fried, Garrett Cole. One of the better 1-2-3s you'll face in baseball. Offensively, the Braves didn't do that well. They still popped some homers, though. And the guy that I'm actually really impressed with against extreme velo is Mauricio Dubon. Of the Braves hitters who have seen 10 or more pitches of 100 miles an hour this season, Mauricio Dubon has a whiff rate of 7.7%. He singled on with a hard hit ball off of Misiorowski back in June, and he has 4 different batted balls in play on 100 miles an hour or harder, thrown at that 100. Matt Olson homered off of 100 miles an hour from Cam Schlittler. Dominic Smith had a single off of 102 from Misiorowski back in June when they played. So thing number 1 I'm watching for is how do the Braves do against the elite velocity and stuff, capital S stuff, of Jacob Misiorowski. Thing number 2 is, can Atlanta prevent Milwaukee from manufacturing runs without homers? The cost of admission this weekend, if you want to be competitive in this series, is you've got to play really good defense. That's just cost of admission. That is the baseline that you have to do if you want to be competitive. And I feel because they're so good at taking extra bases, Ronald Acuna Jr. probably needs to play all 3 games in right field. We've seen the Braves do this sometimes against a righty. They'll DH Ronald, they'll sit Sean Murphy, they'll put Baldwin behind the plate, and your outfield is like Dubon and Yastrzemski. I feel like Ronald needs to be in right field in all 3 games. And we've gone a little farther, actually. We've talked before about the postseason the postseason lineup for Atlanta is probably Mauricio Dubon at shortstop, Ronald at right, obviously Harrison center, either Yastrzemski or Lane Thomas in left, depending on the handedness you're facing, with Sean Murphy behind the plate and Drake Baldwin at DH. You probably need to run that at least 2 games this weekend, if not find a way to do all 3. I bet they don't do all 3 because Murphy caught on Thursday against the lefty. They're not going to have him catch 4 straight games, even with Sunday being a night game, right? I would imagine it's probably today is probably Baldwin behind the plate and Murphy gets the day off. And then my hope would be that they play Murphy Saturday and Sunday. I know a lot of people are just not happy with the lack of offense from Sean Murphy. And you know what? Fair. You can be happy. You can not be happy with the lack of offense. I will also point out that the guy literally has 38 at-bats. All year. And some of those were before the injury. In the month of August, he's played in 7 games. He has 24 at-bats in the month of August. He has 4 hits, by the way. He has 4 hits. One of them's a double. He has struck out 9 times. So over once a game, which is not great. He's not walked once in the month of August. Okay, fine. But there's people online who are like, he has no homers or no RBI this season. Yeah, he has 24 at-bats. Chill. I bet you can find every single player on this team a 24 at-bat stretch where they didn't do squat. So be paid. And honestly, you probably need Sean Murphy to play more often than not. One, for the pitching, to make the pitching better. We saw what he did with Grant Holmes. When Grant Holmes, the Arizona outing, Grant Holmes was shaking off Sean Murphy a lot. On Thursday, I don't think I saw Grant Holmes shake off maybe more than once or twice, and it worked out. I'm not saying the only reason it worked out is because he listened to Sean Murphy, but a lot of the data we have says that, hey, Sean Murphy's really good at calling games. And when we didn't see from here Grant Holmes trying to fight back against what Sean Murphy was calling, the results were exceptional. So, I don't know. But the other reason you probably need to have a good showing as far as stopping Milwaukee from taking the extra base hits and running wild on the bases and everything is a lot of your potential September and postseason opponents are also really good at base running. The Cubs are +6 in base running runs. You're going to face them. Arizona's +8. You know who's number 1 this season in base running runs at +9? And this absolutely shocked me when I saw it. The Philadelphia Phillies are the best team in baseball with base running runs at +9. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what's in the water in Philly. I don't know where this came from. They are +7 on runs via stolen bases. They're actually not that great at runs via extra bases taken, right? But against stolen bases, they are the best in baseball at +7. And it adds up to them being the best in baseball at base running runs. You're going to face them 7 times in the month of September. It would be really nice, one, to show that you can stop teams from manufacturing runs on the base paths. And two, would be great if you could get Sean Murphy going. Get Sean Murphy hitting. Because guess what? Even when he was not great last year, from a batting average perspective, under 200, he had an OPS of over 800 against left-handed pitching. You know who you're going to face in September? And knowing how Philly does things, they'll probably make sure you face him at least twice. Christopher Sanchez. He's a lefty. They'll probably find a way to make you face Jesus Luzardo at least once, if not twice. They're probably going to do their best to make sure you face Sanchez and Wheeler and Luzardo as much as possible. Because Philly knows the only chance they have to win the division is to be within 5 games of Atlanta and so we've seen them do this before. They're going to set the rotation up. You're going to face Sanchez and Luzardo and Wheeler as much as possible. 2 of those guys are lefties. You got to hit lefties. And then Sean Murphy's a big part of that. You've also got to stop Milwaukee from manufacturing runs. If you could stop Milwaukee from doing it, you're going to feel pretty good about the ability to stop Philadelphia from doing it. Okay. Third thing that I'm watching for, this segment's running a little long, I apologize. Third thing I'm watching for this weekend in these games, can Atlanta make elite pitching work for every single out? Misiorowski's finished 6 innings in 15 of his 23 starts. I'm not going out there and demanding the Braves hang 4 runs on Jacob Misiorowski. Can they turn 92 pitches in 6 innings into 103 pitches over 5 1/3? You don't have to go up there and just ambush first pitch fastballs to get Jacob Misiorowski, right? But we know strikeout guys run up higher pitch counts. We saw this with Strider a ton. Strider never, I don't think once, looked like he was going to throw a complete game. I don't know if he knows what the term Maddox even means. But Milwaukee's relievers have been worked a lot this week. I think they covered, it was either Wednesday or Thursday. Maybe it was Thursday. They covered more than half the game. It's a short start from their starter. And they don't have Abner Uribe, who was their best setup man. So can you work pitch counts against Misiorowski and get him out of the game and get into the middle relief? Because we saw for Atlanta on Thursday, Grant Holmes goes 6 innings, which means all Atlanta had to throw was Fuentes, Lee, and Iglesias, and it worked to perfection. They didn't have to go to Victor Medeiros. They didn't have to go to Brent Suter, Ray Kerr. They were throwing the best guys they have. But if you can make elite pitching work extra to get their outs, work counts, go deeper, get their pitch count up, you can make sure that you have the ability, if not in game one, then in the series, to not always be facing the best relievers out of the pen. And I think being able to do that will go a big way towards helping the Braves be prepared for October. This is your dress rehearsal. This is the closest you are going to come outside of that Yankees series to a postseason caliber environment, a postseason caliber pitching matchup. You're on the road for all of these. Weird travel, weird schedules, just like the postseason has weird travel and weird schedules. And like Milwaukee has baseball's best record because it can win in more ways than the Braves currently can. That's the test. Can you find a way to contain the Milwaukee Brewers? Nobody's advancing to the NLCS this weekend. Nobody's getting eliminated. But if you're trying to figure out whether the Braves are actually equipped to make a run in October, I'm really not sure you're going to get a better 3-game test than this one. A rematch against a team you faced in the regular season, which is the format of the National League postseason. You faced the Yankees for the first time 2 weeks ago. You can argue that's not as ideal of a postseason preview because you faced the Milwaukee Brewers once already, and now you face them again. And in October, in the National League playoffs, that's what's going to happen. You're going to face Philly, or you're going to face the Cubs, or you're going to face the Dodgers. You're going to face the Brewers, all teams you played in the regular season. Reminder, you won 2 out of 3 against the Cubs in May. I had a moment where I was like, wait, did we play the Cubs already? I know we played them in September. We played them twice. We played them at home in May, and then we'll play them again in mid-September. So a little aside, that's how my brain works. I was like, wait, have we actually played them? And it's weird. It's a Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday series. All 3 games are night games. Wrigley loves their day games. All 3 games are night games. But anyway, this is the test. It's going to be awesome baseball. And I can't wait to come back on Monday and talk about it. If you want more of this preview, deeper into the numbers and the stats and everything, BravesToday.com, the Friday morning newsletter was all about this series. I knew I'd be out for the weekend. I knew there wouldn't be scouting reports on Friday and Saturday. So I tried to just deep dive into the matchup. And so it's a more detailed version of this podcast. But BravesToday.com, for your paid memberships over there, help out a ton to support what we're doing, both here, the newsletter, and all of that. Enjoy the games this weekend. Don't forget, got to hydrate to be great. We'll talk to you next time on Braves Today.